It's time for
musical theater.
the good,
the bad,
and the ugly.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Taylor.
I'm Jen.
And this week, Amanda is not with us, but we have someone else in her place. Our very first guest. Say hello.
Hello, I'm Jalen Campbell.
Now, as our very first guest, I have a couple questions for you here so our audience can actually learn who you are and get to know you before you throw a bunch of opinions in their face.
Okay, just know I don't know myself. I failed my own class like 27 times, so.
Good to know.
All right.
So, first question, and I will tell the audience right now, he is not an actor. He was not a musical theater major or theater major with us in school. But with those facts put out there, how did you get into musical theater or theater in general? What was your first experience with it that has led you here to be on this podcast with us today?
Well, if we're looking, my first experience with musical theater was actually second grade with the production of Stone Soup. So.
Who'd you play? Inquiring minds want to know.
I was just background ensemble. My only independent line in the show was salt and pepper makes it best.
Yeah, that's great.
Was that your last show ever?
Choir doesn't count as musical, so I can't really go with anything with choir. But yes, that was the first and only thing I was ever in.
Cool.
And then it probably is going to have to do with that show then, but it could be your favorite watch, your favorite done yourself, your favorite seen on Broadway. What is your favorite theater fail of all time in honor of not last week's episode, but the week before's episode?
And it could also be like a show that Taylor and I were in college.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, the explosiveness of Big Love was a very, very, very funny thing. I mean, so many fails that you guys have told me, but I thought it was a wonderful production. I'm surprised nothing slapped me in the face and as I was sitting front row, because I think you guys
did not listen to the fails episode. One thing I will say is just tomatoes.
Tomatoes and Jell-O is all that needs to be said about that.
And our last final question before we dive into today's topic is if you were stranded on a desert island, who knows for how long, maybe for the rest of your life, and could only listen to 5 musicals, what would those 5 musicals be? You can only listen, watch, sing, be entertained by those 5 musicals.
1776.
Mm-hmm.
I will say Phantom of the Opera. Les Mis. Let's see. I will give a small concession to Ye Olde Hamilton. And the Producers.
You need
Producers! I like that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, you need something happier. That island's going to
I know, all of those were like so historical and sad.
Hey, 1776 was not sad. That was actually good.
No, it's a good one. It's just the rest of them were so sad.
Yeah, no, I literally brought SpongeBob SquarePants to my island so I could have some joy.
I think I brought Anastasia for joy because of Vlad.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. Alright, on that note,
today's topic is a musical that he didn't actually mention, but it is one called Hairspray.
Hairspray!
Hairspray is one of my favorite musicals of all time. A musical I actually brought to my deserted island. And before we pop into it all and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the musical, movie, and live TV adaptation, I am going to give us a little history lesson.
Woo! History!
Huzzah!
What's up, Jalen?
So the musical opened in Seattle in 2002 and then made its way to Broadway in 2003. The musical was based on an 80s film of the same name. That 80s film creeps me the hell out for some reason. I couldn't tell you why.
It's so creepy.
If anyone
I watched 10 minutes of it. It was horrible. Well, it wasn't horrible. It was just very weird.
It was just, I don't know, the way they produced it and created it without the music portion, it's a little creepy.
Yeah, a little bit.
But Hairspray won 8 Tonys, including Best Musical. In 2007, the film adaptation was released, and it broke the record for biggest opening weekend for a musical until they were overdone, like before the record was broken again, in July of 2008 when Mamma Mia beat it, and then later when High School Musical 3 came out in theaters and beat the record.
Such a weird thing to beat the record.
I know. High School Musical beat out Hairspray the movie and Mamma Mia the movie. And I can't say anything about that because I saw it in theaters.
I saw it in theaters as well.
Well, with our brief history lesson, who would like to start with something good about the movie, musical, or Broadway production?
Jen, and it's not the good that you talked to me about. I thought of something else. I really love the dancing in Hairspray. I love it. They're talented. They can do all the dancing that they want and not look like a fool. Yeah. I mean, Hairspray is kind of known. When you think of Hairspray, you think dance. But like,
definitely.
I don't know. In the productions that I've seen of it, I've always noticed that the dancing is top notch and everyone is incredible.
Exactly. I've always loved the dancing because it's really good dancing without being overly complicated. So if I wanted to watch the movie, and as anyone who's listened to this podcast before knows, I can't dance. Jen can't dance. And if Amanda was here, she'd say she can't dance.
I am taking dance lessons next year, though. So maybe I'll get better. Maybe.
Maybe Jen can show us a move or two. But it is very good dancing at a simpler level that, to an extent, I can try while watching the movie without looking like a hippo.
Have either of you seen the musical version of it?
I've seen it on Broadway.
Because I saw it at a high school. And there's different styles of dance too, which I really, really enjoy. It's not just like run-of-the-mill theater. It's like, hey, let's throw in a tango in the middle of a song. It's just like, okay, like Edna and Wilbur are suddenly tangoing in the middle of a song. There's
the weird mashed potato and
twist mashed potato. There's the pony. I'm not doing it full out because I'm sitting, but I don't know.
There's a lot of different types.
Maybe I'll show you moves. But
better than more creative than other musicals that just do very standard Broadway type. Even if the Broadway type is more massive and big and out there than what they do, but they do something on a more realistic level for everyone watching it, and that actually intrigued me tremendously. What I've always liked about this show is the concept of it. It doesn't just talk about race, but it also brings up the fact that everyone can be on the outskirts. And yes, in that time, there was race issues with African Americans, but Tracy's also having issues being seen because of her weight.
Fat phobia.
Fat phobic. Same with her mom. And there could even be other things going on with her mom because her mom's always played by a guy, so all in for interpretation there.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the story in college when our professor had no idea that Edna was played by a guy.
I don't remember that. Who said that? Explain.
So some of this might have to be bleeped out because I'm going to actually name the class.
Go right
But
ahead.
when we were in the musical class, Taylor, I think it was
Yes.
yeah, I'm not gonna say
Senior
what
year.
yeah, senior year. Which I guess lots of colleges have them, so you don't have to bleep this out. But we were I guess we all of a sudden got on Hairspray for some reason. Because we were talking about men who play women in shows, and Taylor and I looked at each other and we were like, "Oh, Edna's the big one," along with others, of course, but Edna
Yeah, but no, that's
is
the one most
the one
people
you
know.
think of. And she looks at us and she goes, "Edna's not played by a guy." I was like, "What? Yes, she is."
Has
I
she
was like,
ever, like, maybe not in the movie, you
No.
may miss that, but Harvey, Fierstein, whatever the heck his name is.
Harvey Fierstein, yep.
Yeah, no offense to him, but he's obviously a dude in
He
the
has some
original
5
production.
o'clock shadow in that musical. I
Just
love him
listen,
to
no
death.
offense to him, he has a very distinct voice. Just listen to his voice.
One of my theater friends, who was a guy, played Edna in their high school's production of it. Like,
That's just
it's just how she was like, "Oh, I had no idea." So I'm sorry to like say that story, but it was so weird to me.
No, that teacher, not director. Like, I don't know what version she's been watching of that,
No idea.
but that's what I loved about it. It's one of my favorite musicals of all time. I've always said my dream cast for the show is me playing Penny, Jen playing Tracy, and then Amanda playing Amber. But I don't think that's ever going to happen in my life. But I would love.
Although Taylor and I are closer than we were, because now she's in Connecticut and I'm in Mass. But yeah.
But yeah, no, that would be amazing. What else do I really like about it?
The music's good too. I love the music
the
in
music's
Hairspray.
my favorite. It's very happy and dancey and just normal pop with still being in a Broadway style without being so Broadway.
My Zoom closed. I'm sorry.
Oh boy.
Without being so Broadway that it's hard for your average person to listen to unless they understand classic theater. But then the music can also be very serious and slow and emotional when you get down to the second half of the musical with everything going on with the race and Motor Mouth Maybelle and all that. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, Jalen, you haven't said anything yet. Do you have anything you would like to mention before we move on?
You're our guest.
I will put my services to the test, as they say. So, what I liked about Hairspray was, one, the music. Like, the music it's good, and it's like, I cannot.
He's struggling.
Yes, but the music was good.
Yeah.
Like, there was moments I was like, yeah, I can get to the rhythm of it. In terms of the characters, my favorite is Wilbur. Wilbur is whether it's Christopher Walken or Martin Short, I'm like,
so good.
This guy. Like, if I had to be casted, I would want to be that guy or make Brent that guy. Because seriously.
That would be awesome.
I would love him to play that role.
And that's one role he was born for. And its topic of race, it does a good job. I give it a B. Yeah, I give it a B on its description of race.
Yeah.
Like, there's some elements I'll fill you in on about, like, the side of it, but otherwise...
Well, do you want to go into them? Because you mentioned what you liked. Both of us mentioned what we liked. So that does move on to the bad, and then maybe even the ugly. And then later on we can go into what a realistic casting of the show we think is acceptable and all the history behind that.
Jalen, since you went last, do you want to go first this time?
I'll say I can let you guys do your stuff first.
Okay, so one of the things I have as a bad doesn't have to do with the race, but it has to do with the concept of Edna being played by a man. And that is in the movie adaptation now, I love John Travolta. You can't go wrong with John Travolta. Good. But Harvey, who plays him in the live TV adaptation and was the original on Broadway, he's obviously a dude. No, I don't know if that sounds bad. No offense to him, but he's obviously a guy in drag. All they do is put a dress on him, put like some eyeshadow and some lipstick. They don't put anything else on him. His voice is very raspy and very unique. But in the movie, they put John Travolta in padding, which is, I guess, understandable. Most drag queens nowadays wear some sort of padding and try to change themselves into a woman. Yeah. But they put padding, fake breasts, face prosthetics, and almost everything you can physically put on a human to turn him into a woman, making it for some people who don't understand, probably like our professor, lose the perspective of this character actually being a man in drag, which was the original point. Mm-hmm. So the audience had to make their own interpretation. Is this character actually a woman and just being fat shamed? Or is this character actually a man in drag or transgender or anything of that concept, which for the time period was actually very progressive to put into a 2002 Broadway production that I feel was lost in the movie. Yeah. As much as I love John Travolta and he does such a good job of playing that role, I think they could have taken his prosthetics back a little bit. Mm-hmm. I don't know what any of you think on that.
I mean, I can see why they did it on Broadway because historically, men have been betraying women since the time of Shakespeare. So that's something that Broadway and or theater people are more used to. So for them, it's like, yeah. But for movie productions, if you're trying to appeal to a wider degree of audiences, like there are going to be people who, if they saw John Travolta in drag or like in the same way that it's done on Broadway, that they would be more hesitant about the idea. So in which case they'd be like, let's not watch that movie. That's like, not linking to my political beliefs. That would be, I think, an issue that must have came up in the creation of the film.
Most likely, because at least they still used a guy. If they used a woman, I would have been so mad.
In my production, it was played by a woman.
See, that's bad.
But I mean, going off of that, I have 2 points. I'll say one. I was in a production that was an all-white version of Hairspray. It was really bad. We changed everything.
Now that's bad. I'm okay with to an extent. At one point, okay with all white cast if they don't change anything.
But like they cut out Mr. Turnblad. It was Dance Off Day. I'm not going to say the other one because I am white. And I feel weird saying the other one because that would be racist. But yeah, it was really bad. I played Prudy, Penny's mom, which would have been a great role for me had we actually had the right people to do it. But yeah, I mean, it turned. I mean, not that the ending of Hairspray is really all that good when it comes to race anyway, but it just made it worse.
I don't know. Go into detail about that. How do you feel about the ending of the show then?
I feel like it's a white savior story, which, if you don't know what that means, it means someone of Taylor and my race comes in and solves the problem for all African Americans or Black people or people of color, anything like that. And it makes it seem like those minorities cannot solve the issues or whatever they face on their own. So that's a big issue I have with it. And Tracy, of course, is the white savior because she integrates everyone at the end. So yeah, we can discuss that.
I get exactly what you're saying. I never made the connection.
I made that connection 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I was like, whoa. I was like,
ooh,
I need to educate myself on this a little bit because this is a lot. But yeah.
That is very, very true. And Tracy and like her mom.
will say Tracy's a big dream role of mine, but you need to take into account that she is problematic and has issues. And even though she's problematic and has issues, she's still a dream role of mine. But I don't know what I'm going to play
her. For the
her.
time of the show, she is very progressive and doing what needs to be done. Yes, she's very helpful to them. She kind of takes over a little bit. But I feel like she's doing the right thing, though. The way the writers have written it as her taking over too much, I see how that can be a white savior story. But the character of her in that time was actually a very progressive, helpful person. Well, I don't know if you want to go off of that, Jalen.
Or
if you
Jalen
want to say
can go
Jen.
next. I mean, Jalen probably has more insight on this than we do. So
ironically,
yes.
Your point about Tracy being the white savior, I made that connection right when I was seeing the movie for the first time last week. I'm like, really? This trope again?
Yeah.
Really?
It's really bad.
Like, in which case, like, that was the cornerstone of my main issues of the film, because of course, I did the research on the historical side of Hairspray. I was about to say Grease for some reason, but we're not in the 50s.
We discussed Grease already.
Yeah. I don't know, Grease, Hairspray, and for some reason, what's the other one?
Wrong hairstyle, period. We moved from Grease to Hairspray.
Yeah, Grease to Hairspray. There was also something else that it'll come back to me.
Okay.
But it'll come back in the more. But when researching Hairspray, I did look into like the presence of Black organization in Baltimore. And by the 50s and 60s, you did have the NAACP and the Urban League, in Baltimore. They were also, they were present. And it's not as if the whole idea of like challenging the system for African American communities in that time period was new in Baltimore. So definitely I would have felt that they had access to civil rights groups. So if they wanted to protest, they could in a more organized and more, I don't want to say elite, but a more organized sense. Although in looking at Baltimore history, before the 50s and 60s or around the time, you did have smaller like protests being organized by smaller institutions or like religious institutions. So you can say Motormount's whole protest was just a small civilian sized thing that was transitioning out from that perspective to the NAACP's perspective. So in many ways, there should have been there was already resources for them to organize. They really didn't need Tracy to say, let's form a march. In which case they're like, good idea. But I think one of the reasons why I can say Tracy is integral into this whole perspective is one, she was the talk of the town in terms of popularity. If you want, unfortunately, this is a side effect of not just this movie, but also in studying African American, but also other protests and minorities, you're gonna need to have roots of support from white Americans that are sympathetic to your cause. In that case, Tracy was sympathetic. She was also well known by the public. So if you have the most famous person in your city on board with your movement, then that gave a little bit of legitimacy towards that and towards that goal. So I can see why she was integral to the part. And at least her, and this is where I agree with Taylor that the Broadway production is better than the movie. The fact that she does get locked up is historically accurate, as white Americans were either imprisoned, they lost status, or in extreme cases, even killed for standing side to side with African Americans protesting the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone realized that. If you've only seen the 2007 movie, not the Broadway show or the live TV adaptation, in the movie, Tracy, once she hits the police officer, and they say that she bludgeoned him and injured him, which is not true. She, in the movie, runs for the hills and just keeps running and ends up in Penny's basement.
Yep.
While Link is over at her house singing to a photo and eating a chocolate bar. And in the actual production, she actually ends up in jail with Link singing at the bars of her jail cell because what she did got her in major trouble, while every other African American got locked up as well in the movie as well. And they got let out because Mr. Turnblad paid for their bail. But in the movie, they almost, from now that I'm looking at it, put her on a pedestal because she was able to run away and easily get away and not get locked up like everyone else. Yes, there was supposed to be a mass search for her, but
White privilege.
Yeah, there was supposed to be a mass search for her, but if there was really that big of a mass search, she would have been discovered.
They literally change a line in Without Love from the movie and the musical too. I don't know if either of you caught that, but at one point, Tracy says, "Let me out at the next toll," when she's being shipped to Penny's house. And in the musical, Link's like, "Tracy, I want to kiss you." And she says, "Then I can't wait for parole."
Yeah, then I can't wait for parole.
But it's literally just like, she's obviously a white savior in both, but at least in the musical, like Jalen said previously, you kind of understand why she's an integral part of it, whereas in the movie, she just literally is white and takes
Do you
over
think
everything.
there's a way, Jalen, they could have rewritten it to have...
I'm sorry, there's a cat.
Wants to see me. There's a way they could have rewritten it to have Tracy... I don't know if I want to say like their spokesperson to try and get it to be more widely seen, but
like
still
an
have them
uplifted voice, but
while
they're at the center.
The center of it and being in charge of it, and not her be the center of everything.
I say let Motormouth, along with other members of the community, suggest protesting.
Seaweed and Inez.
Correct. Let them suggest the idea of protesting and like forming a march and everything and trying to get, more integrated stuff on the Corny show and have them approach, I was about to say Casey. Tracy.
Casey. I thought you were going to say Candy.
No. Close though. Approach Tracy about her joining their march.
Yeah.
If that was done first and that was laid out first, then we could say not the white savior trope. Not a white savior story, just she is good friends with them and accepts them and is helping them out with their cause. And correct.
Not trying to
so like an anti-racist would do, in a sense. Just like amplify the voices while still letting them lead the movement. In a sense, but not really.
Tracy wouldn't be leading it. She'll just be like
no. I mean like amplifying and having like Seaweed and all of them staying at the center and leading it. Yes.
She would be a part of it without being like the first person in line at the very beginning, linking arms with everyone, walking down and being like.
So
always in the front, in the middle, like with a shining light down on her.
That crap is so performative. I'm sorry, like White people at the forefront is performative. You don't go to the forefront. I guess Tracy does in the movie, but like
And what she does when she gets up to the front, she bludgeons a police officer.
You barely tapped him with her sign.
She literally was like, and then ran away.
Trevor, come
Like,
back.
I'm like,
Where's Trevor going? Well, it's
In
all
short
this
news,
talk
Trevor
about
has the rest of my notes stuck to his tail.
oh my god. Honey, you need to
Wait, did he take the part I need?
Did he?
No, I have the part I need. It's sticking out his
good.
tail, attached to his tail.
Well, you gotta remove it from his tail. I mean, you don't want him to eat
yeah,
it.
yeah. You don't
Eventually.
want. Oh, eventually. I mean,
fine.
true. My cat wouldn't notice if he was still here.
Ah, sunshine.
He was a good boy.
Yes, he was.
So,
I only had a lighter.
I
I
had
would light
something to
it.
say, but I don't remember. Oh, so along with that going on with Tracy, as an African American Jalen, how do you feel they represented the few black characters that are in this? Because even with race being the main plot line, or just progression in general, because Tracy is overweight and all that, not 90, probably 85% of the characters that actually speak are white characters.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that, along with the representation of the very few people we actually do get to see? Because white characters are always very straight up, easy to portray at that point, because it was the majority of people everyone saw.
So I think, in terms of representation, I think what I give the movie credit for is showing the segregation of Baltimore. Like, even though technically in 1956 they did desegregate, there's obviously that tension of overt racism and overt segregationism. So I think they nailed like the background of segregated Baltimore very much well in terms of 1962. And I do give them credit for how like members of the African American community are still like in that sense of caution or in a sense fear of like breaking those social boundaries. This is 1962, so Martin, did they ever say what month this was in? Like,
no, it was during the school year, obviously, but
yeah, during the school.
Yeah.
So okay,
There was a dance at some point because she wanted Link to ask her out to like the spring fling. I want to say it was probably in March or April, would be my guess.
okay, because one of the key ringers of 1962 would have been the mention of Cuban Missile Crisis, and Fidel Castro was name dropped once in the entire musical. So we'll just say early mid 62. There's the civil rights movement. Well, civil rights movement has already started, but it's still in its early days. You don't have the massive marches of MLK, not yet happening. So I can see why the younger African Americans are still resistant at forming marches, as the only thing they had is like this various sit-ins, and well, Baltimore and Maryland are still technically the South, so there's like that overarching fear. In my view, I mean, as you said, this is centered around white America at this time period. So, and as the majority of a southern city, they're going to be more prominent than African Americans. I think the casting of it is fine. My only concern is, again, similar to Jen's situation. We have schools that put on Hairspray but don't really have diversity. And
yeah, I'll get into that in a second. I have a couple more things I'm going to state about.
It's kind of like Once on This Island. Why do Once on This Island or Hairspray or In the Heights or anything if you don't have a diverse
True,
cast?
I did do Once on This Island. I was in it, but what we did was, instead of doing like the Islanders and the white people, we did it by what's it called?
Social
Poverty.
class?
Like it was class. It was the low class people in poverty and the high rich royals. That's how we tried to play it off. I'm not even sure if it came out that way, but back to the movie. I don't know if I agreed with that before I even move on, but back to the movie and the play or the musical. I had one thing that I thought of and mentioned like last week or something. And I'm wondering how you guys feel about, and anyone listening, feel about the ending of the movie, because the Broadway show / live action musical event, TV event, put it on very differently than the way the movie ends, as much shit as I gave the movie for Tracy running away. The Broadway show and live TV event have it end with them just being like, hey, nobody needs to win Miss Teenage Hairspray. We're all happy as long as everyone's on TV, yada yada. In the movie, Little Inez actually wins Miss Teenage Hairspray and becomes the first black lead dancer on the Corny Collins show, making the show forever officially integrated, instead of it just kind of like being, oh, the show's now officially integrated, we don't care about all this. Everything's just kind of solved situation. I've always personally loved the movie ending better because of that, even though the movie kind of does put Tracy on a high platform. They redeem themselves by doing it like that, because in the Broadway musical, Tracy does win, but she rejects it for everything going on.
Yeah. I would have liked the musical better had they, if they switched the endings, like, had the musical version end the movie and had the movie version end, you know what I'm trying to say. Movie ending musical. Musical ending movie. That's my point.
Yeah, if we had the musical,
I feel like
the Broadway musical and the movie combined, we would get the best version of the show.
Because, Tracy also makes a comment at the end, which I don't know if either of you caught. She says, I'm rejecting it so I can go to college to study music and racial, injustice or equality or whatever.
I forgot about that.
Which I like, but I don't think it should have been added necessarily, because that's putting her on a higher pedestal.
What is that saying about Amber? Is Amber like a complete idiot or something?
It's literally, it literally just there's so, Hairspray has so many issues. If I could play Tracy right now, I would, but she's so freaking problematic. It's so bad.
Everything, when you look deep down, has stuff wrong.
Literally, I feel like the ending of Hairspray is bad. No matter which way you splice it. But I enjoy the fact that I like the ending of the movie. I don't think that that's bad. It's not like I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy the ending of the musical. I think the ending of the musical is so fucking stupid.
Yes.
It's dumb.
What about you?
And I'm white, so.
Okay, what about Jalen, who's not? How do you feel?
What about Jalen, who's not?
I know, that sounds a little weird to say. Sorry if that sounded weird, audience, but I'm trying to get a different perspective here on this same question.
So, I liked the movie's ending. Give Little Inez a victory. She wanted to be part of the show. And if you're gonna practice integrationism, practice what you preach. They gave her the crown to show that's more integrated. That's the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. In terms of, the only reason why I kind of fault with Tracy wanting to go to college for, music and racial justice, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, girl, you don't even pay attention in history, let alone your other classes. How are you supposed to get into college to do all this?
True. That brings me to the next thing I was mentioning this morning that weirds me out tremendously. I have done no research on it, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but this weirds me out tremendously, especially as someone who has dyslexia and learning differences and has been in learning differences classes.
We're waiting with
Nowadays-
bated breath, my friend.
Nowadays, learning differences class are people with dyslexia. Special ed is people with Down syndrome and stuff like that. Then there's remedial classes for people who aren't as far off as either of those. And in at least the live TD adaptation, I'm not actually sure if this is done in the Broadway production, but Rosie O'Donnell, who's playing the gym teacher at one point, when Tracy's gone to detention a couple times, actually says she's putting her in special ed, which is apparently where all the African American students are as well. Am I wrong? What is special? Is there anyone out there that knows what special ed exactly was at that time period? Was she really
No.
getting sent to like?
I know what
classes-
special ed is now because I was in
was it
special
like-
ed, but
Were all the African Americans and people that didn't follow the rules in the same classes as all the kids with Down syndrome, not learning as much as someone like them could, even though Seaweed is obviously said he's extremely smart, or kids with dyslexia not getting the right stuff and only evil.
I can answer that question
what
as
is it?
I've done
We-
some research on that.
we
Okay,
have
good.
a historian.
So within the 60s, there was a strong support and advocacy of family associations to develop classes for people with learning disabilities. So there were, by the time of 1962, there were the federal government passed 3 acts in relations to special education. They had the Captioned Films Act of 1958, the Training of Professional and Personal Act of 1959, which trains teachers to be adapted to teach special education, and the Teachers of the Deaf Act of 1961. So you had schools around this time, of course, offering special education to those with learning disabilities, but similar to the process of desegregation, this was, of course, one dependent upon state regulations, and also, well, even in the 1960s, there weren't that much of a grasp of of what qualifies someone for special education and what's not. And well, it was often, well, as you saw with the gym teacher, it was often used as a way of punishment to get, those same people who are constantly getting detention or any sort of action that would basically waste the time of like teachers and students, just sent to an area where they can just, not be a bother to the main student populace. So technically there was classes.
Is that accurate? So the fact that the gym teacher put her in special education is from historical research that you know of. Was that accurate, or was that just something strange they wrote into the movie?
I have to put it as 50-50 because, well, again, a gym teacher no less, and like they don't like gym teachers are more of an authoritative, teachers. They're like, well, you're not getting X, Y, and Z, so I'm gonna put you over there where you don't screw over the actual student populace in that sort of sense. But like also like again, this is the South. Anyone that just doesn't follow the rules, they'll just like isolate them, put them in another area, let them do what they please, but as long as they don't mess it up for everyone else. That was that. And also with
She didn't even
African-American-
do that much. She literally just like beehived her hair and interrupted the teacher like twice.
I mean,
According to
I
what
don't
we
know how
saw.
I don't know how many tardies or detentions she had, but like, well, I mean, at least with Tracy, she got, they're not even legitimate. They're like small misdemeanors. I mean, for the African American students, like you came in late, like obviously detention, or you said something, well, against the lost cause revisionism, then they're like, so you're disrespecting Southern history, you're gonna get detention. So
Yeah, no, they were all in detention according to the movie and musical.
So yeah, that's as much as I can give you on special education.
Yeah,
and
no, it's strange because Amber and Link aren't in school like 75% of the time, and they're still living it up.
Well, they're white. They're white privilege. They go
That's true.
And
Well, they're white and they're thin, so they have white
True.
privilege and they have thin privilege.
and also Amber has
And
social
pretty
status.
privilege.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the other thing the show does teach us besides white privilege. It shows what thin privilege can do to a person.
And pretty
As well.
privilege. Pretty privilege is a thing.
And
It's
social
the
Exactly.
thing.
See, Tracy may be the center of it all, but at least she was still an outcast in her own rights because back then, pretty privilege and thin privilege was a huge thing as well,
It was a big
especially
thing.
on TV.
Yes. Yes.
indubitably.
Mhm.
So I love how the show did take aspects of it. Definitely showing something like that not many other shows show. As we talked about in Grease, the only larger character in that show, literally her entire life and character development was food.
Mhm.
Tracy is that trope, but she tries to become more of herself, even though that is what she looks like without trying to change herself. And that is something I have always highly appreciated of her, separate from the fact that she was trying to save all the African Americans.
Mhm.
Back to the fact that she wanted to go to college. If she's in special ed, no college is letting her in, especially in that day and age.
I mean, yeah, I can't really give you an estimate on like the acceptance rate, but I mean, if she pulls her act together, I
She
mean,
pulls the act together.
she can. I mean, she can, as long as she comes to school, doesn't get distracted by Link, and blah 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 blah
I
blah,
doubt she
and
won't.
stays
She's obsessed
awake.
with him.
She can. She can make it. I
She was
mean,
obsessed with him to like almost a creepy level
Yeah.
to begin
I
with.
mean, but that's the '60s. Ah, welcome to. I'm sorry, I can't say welcome to the '60s with a straight face.
Welcome to the 60s.
Oh no!
Oh.
Oh no! I love that. That's my favorite song because I know what's
Yeah,
gonna
what's your
happen in
favorite
the
song
later half
before
of
we
the
get into the
60s.
bad and the ugly and the terrible
Well,
casting of the show?
I feel like we've already covered the bad and the ugly. Correct me if
Yeah,
I'm
before we
wrong.
switch over, what's your favorite song? Now that he mentioned it.
I'm gonna go with my go-to audition song, "Good Morning Baltimore," and also "Run and Tell That" because I love that song. And also "Without Love." I like a lot of Hairspray songs.
I love Without Love just because I've always wanted to play Penny and I love her like portion of that song. That's my favorite part to sing.
Also, You Can't Stop the Beat.
I love Without Love and You Can't Stop the Beat. That's just an awesome dance party beat, and I love Edna's part of You Can't Stop the Beat where she just comes out and breaks out into song and dance and she's like, everybody look at me, the overweight drag mom.
She sings about ham.
That's why I love it. See, things like that just make me love this musical, as many issues as we have with it. Jalen, what's your favorite song?
Yeah. Inquiring minds want to know.
I love Welcome to the '60s only because, as a historian, I know the '60s are going to go from sugar to shit really quickly in 1963. Oh, they thought that was going to be another prosperous decade, but hey, you gods! Oh,
How do you
God.
feel about if you love Mr. Turnblad so much? How do you feel about his whole duet situation there with the tango?
Yeah.
It's lovely, and I just want to.
Well,
I just
yeah.
want to see Printing One dance with that.
I mean, the only part I don't like about Wilbur's tango is he's literally doing it with Edna, but like a song or two before, Velma Von Tussle was literally trying to steal him away from Edna.
Thank
But
God he didn't.
he's so
fall for
loyal
that
and
trick.
stupid that he didn't even know.
I know.
He
That's
didn't even
adorable.
know.
He didn't even realize
I can't
it.
even class that as like bad. That's like a good part of Hairspray.
He didn't
He's a
even
loyal
realize it.
husband. He's a good freaking man. Everyone should find someone in their life like Wilbur.
See, I wonder. See, that's one thing that's why I hated the fact that Edna was, when Edna's portrayed as a woman or too much portrayed as a woman, because I've sometimes take the interpretation, did he not realize it because he's not as attracted to women of her standards and women like Edna that are more manly or maybe are actually men.
I don't know.
I don't know, but that's what
I
I've
don't
always
know.
loved about that concept. Is he
Uh-oh.
just so innocent, or is he in some form gay? But with that being said, that's for all your guys' interpretation. We are now going to move on to the second half of this, where we talk about casting, professional casting of this show. In this article I found that came out in 2020, they were saying things that for the authors and creators of Hairspray, they know it has been performed for some time without black actors. The casting conundrum has been an issue that all of the authors of Hairspray have wrestled with for some time. In the past, they have said that you should look outside of your community to see if you can find other people to play these characters.
Mm-hmm.
But they have also allowed groups to cast the show as best as they could, as long as the words and the story were unaltered.
To my production.
Yes. Since a major part of Hairspray is about fighting against the idea that someone could not be on a show because of their race, it seemed wrong that Hairspray would deny someone the chance to be in the show because of their race. This was all written out into a small little paragraph or about a page that schools and community theaters could put into their programs so they could do the show with whatever kind of cast they wanted, so it could actually be performed in their community, and the authors would say at least the story was getting out, even if they could not portray it 100% correct. My high school, 2 years after I left, did the show, and I was up in arms about it. To this day, I'm not sure if I was actually ready to protest or if I was just so mad that I wasn't actually in the show because I wanted to do it so badly. Sorry to say. But then when I got to the show, not knowing any better, I read that thing in the program, and it actually made me feel better about what was going on, even though I'm not actually sure if it should have. But then, on to the next note of history before you guys say anything. As of 2020, the stage English people.
Words are hard.
As of 2020, the creators said producers are required to cast the show as to accurately reflect the characters as we wrote them.
Mm-hmm.
And that the cast can no longer be all white or what they were not written as. So as of 2021, any white casts are unacceptable and those shows will be terminated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With that being said, in the past, that has not happened.
Nope.
Hairspray has been performed all over the world. I think the cat actually took what I was going to read right now.
Good boy.
Oh, Trevor.
But Hairspray has been performed all over the world. In Japan, they did an all-white version of the cast, where the only black character was a half-Japanese, half-black woman playing Motormouth Maybelle. And then the worst thing I have ever heard, and was stated in this article to show why it was so important that they changed this, was that in South Korea, they did a semi-professional performance of Hairspray, where every African-American character was actually done in blackface. Now, I have never heard of a high school or a community theater doing this show in blackface and going that far, but what is your guys' perspective on the concept of all of this?
Do the show as written. Do it as written. Bottom line. I saw something on an audition post where a girl wanted to audition, I think, for Motormouth Maybelle, but she was Taylor of our race. And people were like, don't do it. Like, that's for black people. Like, don't take that away. And she was like, oh, also, they're talking about using darker foundation on white people. And they were like, really don't do it now. That's blackface. And that's actually against what the paragraph says. Because technically, as long as the message is still there, it's a-okay. But if you put someone like us two in blackface, the message is not there, and it's also racist. If you don't have the people to do the show, you either look for outside talent or you get a different show.
Exactly.
My church was going to do Once on This Island, and we decided not to, and we did Schoolhouse Rock because we are a majority white church. And
exactly. Even with that paragraph going in programs, the authors and creators never wanted blackface.
No.
Never.
Because
but with everything going on, they
of caricatures. I mean, musicals in and of itself derive from racist culture because of minstrel shows.
True.
But we shouldn't be having blackface in 2021. We shouldn't even be having racism in 2021. We shouldn't be having any ism or
South
phobia
Korea,
in 21.
Except
South
snake
Korea,
phobias.
as much as I love K-pop.
Except what?
Snake phobias.
Snake phobias. Yes, snake phobia is fine. I'm fine with people who are scared of snakes. I'm
South
scared of
Korea, as much as I love K-pop, think before you put on a musical.
I mean, yeah, really.
There's not much black people in South Korea or much.
Well, then they could have chosen something else, or they could have at least done it like Japan and kept everyone white at least.
Or they could have done a different show.
Yeah,
exactly.
They could have done like Grease, where the majority's white anyway.
My brain went to Miss Saigon, but I think I'm being racist by saying that.
Do you know the only character you and I can play, Taylor? Gigi, the white girlfriend. The rest are Pacific Islander. That's racist.
Yeah, so I screwed up there too. South Korea just put on Grease.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, Jalen, your opinion?
So in preparing for this, I actually looked up the scripts to Hairspray Junior, which I think is what they use for.
Yeah, all high schools. Maybe not all community theaters, but all high schools will use Hairspray
So I
Junior.
looked up to see how many times the special day of the Corny Show is mentioned, and it's mentioned in 4 pages. And I'm just gonna say, if you're mentioning that, if you're going to portray the hardships of segregation along with the process of integration, a black cast is needed for those productions. I agree that the characters need to be implemented as how they were written. Like, for this topic of segregation and integration, I mean, especially if it's being portrayed in high schools, it needs to have that, the black cast in order to show, yeah, this is because high school is also like the time where you learn about racisms or about the acts of segregation, genocide, and other consequences of racism. You need people of color to be in Greece. See where you go. Oh, and there was West Side Story I was thinking of. Green, I think that's the 70s or that's late 60s, but either way, for Hairspray, you need to have an ensemble of African Americans to form the basis of Motor Mouth's, protest, but also of the black community in Baltimore.
At least look outside your community and get a couple people, because as I stated earlier, even though that is the main message of the show, 85 to 90% of the cast is white. You can go your town over, grab a seaweed, a motor mouth,
and Inez,
and
Dynamite.
And 3 ensemble members to fill out the Dynamites, and at least fake it. At least have 8 people. You just need 3 girls, a little Inez, a motor mouth, and a seaweed, and you can at least do it to make your heart content. Yes,
I'd
that's
say
not always possible, but there are enough other shows out there where you don't have to put it on, and that makes me upset because I always really, 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 really badly wanted to be in this show, and that's why one reason I got really mad when my school did it, but I understood that I could never be in it for these specific reasons. I had literally one black kid in my entire town. Yes, he was part of the theater program, but he was an actor, not a singer, and we would still need other females to put on the show correctly. So I accepted that at a young age.
Yep.
I would say have a little bit more than 8, like, because you need to have Seaweed and his crew.
I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt
Yeah.
in that opinion.
When I saw it at the high school, they had like 15 to 20 black kids in the production, which I think is the bare minimum. But it was, I'm gonna say the town. You can bleep it out. This was also so is a predominantly white town. It was a great production though. They at least had the bare minimum of 15 to 20 black.
Yeah,
black
I
people.
was saying like at least get those 8 because when my high school did it, I don't even think we had 20 people in the entire production. So there are schools that pull it off just doing the named characters in the actual script. So I'm saying, please pick a different show. But if you really desire to do it, at least do the bare minimum and get the named characters to play their part as the right race.
Taylor, bleep this. I'm about to say the name of the theater. What is now put this on. It was we did not even have a little Inez. We didn't. We had no Inez, we had no Maybell, we had nothing. And we somehow did Hairspray.
How is that even Hairspray anymore? That's just a Tracy Turnblad show.
I know.
I told you, it was really bad. Now, I hope all of these names will be bleeped because these are very close to where I live. Now it does things like We Will Rock You and Mamma Mia and Peter Pan, and not Hairspray unless they have the correct cast, which I really like. I think they're better at that now. They did.
Thank goodness.
It's one thing to tour with an all-white cast, which I still feel is very wrong, but to rewrite the show, that's even worse.
That's why it's not on my acting resume. Boy. Anyway, Hairspray's problematic.
Yes,
I think we still love it anyway.
I still love it and will always love it. I just need it to be performed correctly. And I wish the movie and the musical could be put together to give us maybe a version where Tracy is not as much of a white savior. But going along the lines of the race not being performed correctly, I read in the article that I was reading you guys, a children's theater in Dallas did not just use an all-white cast, but they cast Tracy as someone who was a thin girl and put her in pads, kind of like a fat suit. Was that wrong, or is there a line that you draw where, yes, a white person can never be a black person, but a skinny white person could one day, if they shoved food in their face enough, be a heavy person?
So here's my thing, because I've done some research on this. Plus size people are very rarely portrayed in lead roles. They're very rarely in the front. They're very rarely cast. Within the last year, I've seen 1 show, 2 shows that have plus size people in their cast who are on stage majority of the time. And that was Hadestown that I saw at a local professional theater.
Amazing.
And Mean Girls, which I also saw at the same local professional theater. One was in the ensemble, but Hadestown Ensemble is in it like the entire time. And one played Danny DeVito girl and was in the front during Fearless. Skinny people have their chance to be the Christine Daaes, the Elsas, the Annas, the any role you could think of. The Heathers, the Sophies, the Campbells, whoever it is. People who are plus size do not get that same opportunity. Very frankly, they are not often seen in audition rooms. Same as black actors. Black actors do not get the same opportunities as white actors do. When was the last time you saw a black Disney princess on stage or a black Disney prince?
One
Does it say
time,
Princess and the Frog?
and Princess and the Frog doesn't have a stage show. So
Does not have a stage show. And Tiana is an animal for 80% of the movie anyway.
both of them. And Naveen is an animal for even longer.
What?
Naveen is an animal for like 95% of the show.
It's like those two things, they go hand in hand to me specifically. Like, just like you need black people for the show, you need a fat actress to play Tracy, or a fat female identifying actor to play Tracy.
Yeah, like a bigger,
a bigger boned.
A bigger boned, just person who kind of fits it a little more. But with that, I've always wondered. I agree with literally everything you were saying, but I've always wondered where exactly the line gets drawn. If you have a school that has black actors and white actors, and none of your black kids can sing whatsoever,
you don't do the show.
Black people can't sing. But what if none of them sing? You still have to cast them as the black characters. But if you have one girl that is overweight in your theater who can like kind of sing, but there are about 5 or 6 girls that are 5 times better than her, do you put one of them in pads, or do you give her the role no matter what just because of the way she looks?
Pick a different show.
Exactly.
Just like I say, if you don't have enough black actors, you pick a different show. Pick something easy. Bring it on. Do Heathers. There's enough for everyone there. Like, frankly, especially with the new Heathers rewrite, any one of the Heathers could be plus size. Any one of the Heathers could be black. Or any one of the characters could be black or plus size.
Exactly. That's a rule that after talking about this and doing research on this, I feel all high schools should go by, and is something that they need to stop writing junior shows for things like this. All high schools, even if they have the requirements for things like this, should stick to scripts where no one has to be portrayed.
Your disc is almost full.
Thank you, computer.
Broke the tension.
All high schools should. Well, now you screwed me up, computer. All high schools should not be allowed to do shows where people have to be portrayed in a very specific way. Race, weight, maybe something else that I can't think of. Not even unless, but they should not be doing shows where it's so very specific. And that should be left for professional theaters who have the time to go out and search for these people and get people that can best portray these roles, and not high schools that have like maybe a theater department of 10 to 25 people and are just using what they have to give these kids an opportunity to have fun and show the skills that they own and have and love to put on.
Yep. I agree with everything you just said. I don't know if Jalen has anything to add.
I agree.
All right.
Final note I did not mention is Edna should always be played by a man. That's the point.
I mean, literally, like, I won't say the name of the theater. I feel like if I did, you're going to bleep it anyway, and it's about to come out of my mouth. I'll call it what it's called now, but it was. So what they did is they literally picked a show that they shouldn't have done. Like they had majority girl cast and like 2 or 3 boys. Like Link was literally played by a girl. Which I don't find issue with girls playing boys. Like that's the
I've
one
done it
line.
before.
That's the one line where I'm like, girls play boys, boys play girls. Like, who cares?
Yeah,
But
if the character is written as a boy or a girl and you want to make them a boy or a girl, like look like it, do the prosthetics, and that's your decision. Sometimes schools have to do
But,
it 'cause
like-
not enough boys audition for theater.
but like, I literally think there was like 1 boy in the whole cast, or like 2 boys. But like, in that case, do a girl-heavy show that's majority white. Like,
Exactly. Like, luckily, Edna's
I
not
don't
is not usually miscast. That is something that very rarely happens. Jen, you've experienced it, but it very rarely doesn't happen. And luckily, most of the time, if it's done by semi-professional theaters, they don't have the resources to do the John Travolta method.
I mean,
So
I
it
will
looks like a
say,
man in drag.
most professional productions, even very high-end community theater productions, like the theater that I'm a part of, like, if the theater that I'm a part of, which I'm sure you guys know, I'm doing the show at it right now, if we ever did Hairspray, which we probably won't because Canton's not a very well-dispersed town, is what I'll say. It's white heavy. But if we ever did it, we would search for outside talent. We got lucky with the fabulous Lipitones that someone who could play the lead character showed up. Sometimes we have to look for outside talent. And we were lucky that someone who was good for that role showed up. But like, if you can't do the show, look for outside talent. Don't do blackface. Please.
Exactly. Like,
Please don't be racist. Please don't do that. We beg you.
no, but you can change things. What I've stated in the past is Hairspray is a big reason, shows that there are certain things you can't change character-wise and casting-wise in a show because the storyline is so heavily based on who the characters are, race-wise, looks-wise, and everything of that nature. If you're doing a show where the race, gender, or anything having to do with the character doesn't affect the script whatsoever, you can do as you please. We did American Idiot in college, and one of the male roles was turned into a female role, making a lesbian couple in the show. I did a whole TV report on it for one of my classes.
Which
And
she follows our podcast. We love you, and you were amazing.
That was perfectly acceptable because there was nothing with the role having to do with the gender of the character. Yes, that now changes the audience perspective on the character a little bit, but it's not changing the way anyone in the script would treat that character, the way the show is written.
And like Taylor said, our friend was not playing a guy. They literally changed the character Tunny to be a girl.
Exactly.
Because the person who originally played Tunny quit. But I feel like our friend who ended up getting that role should have been Tunny from the start.
Nice.
But
it's like shows like Dear Evan Hansen.
Yes.
You could do Dear Evelina Hansen. You could
or Ivana, not
exactly.
Evelina. Ivana.
I don't know what's the name, but you could do. Evan could be black, white, Mexican, Asian, and girl, and it wouldn't make a difference to the script.
That's my next point too. Is in Hairspray, there's not a lot of Pacific Islanders. Why? Why aren't Asians cast either? That's so weird, isn't it?
True. See, that's the thing. At least Hairspray has African Americans in it. No offense, because that does sound a little wrong. Because
that does sound very wrong.
But Asians are nowhere.
But it literally, like, someone commented that one of, like, the Tracy and their local community theater or professional production was Asian. And I was like, she totally could be Asian. Like,
easily.
As long as she's
white, they don't say.
She doesn't, she could be a non-black person of color. Like, that could be a thing.
True. Jalen, do you have anything to say? Are we going in the right direction there? Or?
For in relation to Asian Americans, Baltimore being on the East Coast, most concentration of high Asian American, communities are more or less on the West Coast. So it took a
Oh,
while. Well, and this is the 60s, so maybe
Yeah.
give or take mid 60s, maybe late. You did have some small pockets of Asian communities in other cities. Baltimore, and for ones, it's not really high, wasn't really that high on it, like industry or other aspects that you would say in Detroit, Chicago, or in certain cases New York or Philadelphia. So small, you would have had a small Asian enclave, like a small Asian community, but not that much as compared to like the big cities of that time. So just a small demographics
That's
less
So to be historically accurate, you would have them in there, meaning the world just needs to write more shows that are nowadays could have Asian characters, like Evan could be Asian, and people just need to get better at casting more people. Yes, I guess the writers wrote
Diverse.
Evan as a white male, but he doesn't have to be, and that is just the main one I keep going back to. But it could be anything. Mean Girls. Any of those characters could be black, Asian.
Except Katie.
True.
Because Katie, again, is the white savior of the story.
True, and the point is, there's a whole joke, oh, Katie, why are you white if you're from Africa? But anyone else could be whatever race they...
Literally, Regina
Right.
George, like, 2 of the Regina Georges were black on Broadway.
See,
Like,
characters either need to be... Bottom line of this whole episode, characters need to be portrayed accurately or be portrayed
not
in
at all.
any realm, in any form, and not just be the same thing every time we look at them.
Yeah, for sure.
Changing gender is a lot harder because certain shows are just written that way, but race, size, body image, those are things we can easily change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
indubitably.
And we need to work on that. I would love to hear everyone listening. I'd love to hear your opinions on that. What shows you think should be done and should be more creative and out of the box with the way they cast people, and what your dream casting for certain roles would be to kind of mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Answer the question here. Comment on our Instagram. Comment on our YouTube page if you are watching us on YouTube. If not, you should go check out our YouTube channel. Same name as our podcast, except it says the podcast at the end. And with all of that, we hope to see you back here next week. As with this recording, I am not actually sure what's coming out next week. So maybe if you're listening, I will add in something that tells us what we're listening to next week. If not, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back for the mystery episode next week.
Musical theater.
The good.
The bad.
And the ugly.